Hey everyone, Mick Lebinskas here, and we are going to talk today about growing your climate tech company through partnerships. We're going to get Greg and Michael to introduce themselves in a second. I think the usual trickling in over the first few minutes of the founders. Um, the structure of this for everyone is we're just going to chat about some of the key principles for the first half of it, then open up for questions. So this is a founder focused presentation. It is being recorded, so don't share your deep darkest secrets. You don't want the world to know. And we will kick off soon. Had about 20 people sign up. We're hoping for five, but again, founders are busy apparently. Just busy banking all of that customer revenue and the easy capital raising that's just flowing through the streets at the moment. So it's just out there scooping it all up.
Sounds
The partnerships was one of those things that we has come up really regularly in a lot of our conversations with the founders, and Greg and Michael have got some really good experience growing businesses that way. So yeah. While we're waiting, and because it gives us another 2 minutes, Jeff, do you want to give a quick 30-second pitch, and Ishan, and just a quick 30-second pitch? Some Greg Michael got some context for those who've been good enough to turn up.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. Jeff Andrews, co-founder of Capricorn Power, and we've got a system for generating renewable electricity 24 hours a day, lower price than the grid, ready to commercialise now.
Yeah, nice pitch. Ishan.
G'day, Sean Dan from Regenex. We're an investment platform that makes it easy for institutional and wholesale investors to invest in clean energy infrastructure projects. We utilize, it's a blockchain powered investment platform. We digitize clean energy projects. And we make it transparent as well. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ishan. Well, we're going to kick it off. People dribble in or not. And again, we just want to make sure we record this video and get it out to everybody else. So, Greg and Michael, if you want to kick off, just give us a bit of the background and tell us some of the key principles around growing your tech startup. And obviously, I'm going to bring the climate tech angle, and I might ask and add some little bits of flavor in there, like some things which might be different for a sort of a climate tech or a deep tech business. Like certainly like Jeff's and a lot of the Climate Salad members. So but I'll throw it over to you guys.
Cool. Would it help if we just give a quick 2 minutes on why the hell we should listen to Greg and Mike?
Absolutely, yeah. Give us this quick life.
Cool. Gosh, I've been in tech my whole career. First startup exit was back in San Francisco, kind of dot-com boom era. Then was in mostly multinational software companies, PeopleSoft, SAP, and the like, for quite a few years. And then back 28 years on from my first startup, I meet up Mike, and we don't know each other, and we co-found the next startup, and we scaled that to what 26 countries in about 4.5 years, and exited that to Pearson in the UK about 2 years ago. So we can get into the nuts and bolts of how we scale it, talk about partnerships.
All right, and so on the other half of that, I'm Mike. So I had 10 years in consulting in the UK and then Sydney, and then set up my own data and product company that grew quickly across APAC and was acquired by BCG and led to the creation globally of BCG Digital Ventures. So I was a partner at BCG for a few years and the managing director of Digital Ventures for APAC. And then in the course of doing all that work, a lot of what we were doing was automating and digitizing major legacy businesses. So I became very concerned about what was automation in the future of work, and then sort of reskilling and upskilling and so on. Met Greg and left BCG to set up Fathom to provide a data and SaaS platform to solve those sorts of questions. Since Fathom was acquired, we did a very short earn-out period, which was very deliberate. So we were only with Pearson for about 6 or 8 months to basically transition the team and the technology. And then since leaving, we've done a number of things. So we're both now LPs and multiple VCs here in the UK and the US. We're both on a couple of boards each. So we're both on AI and SaaS boards. And then working pro bono with a bunch of good causes, charities, not-for-profits, universities, a few government programs as well we've been involved with over the last couple of years. And now kind of bringing all that together to build a national scale-up system for Australia, borrowing from and working very closely with the leaders of the Mars Discovery District in Toronto, which we've had a lot of good personal experiences with.
Cool.
Thanks, team. Yeah, great background. We're keen to. We've got a range of companies here, and obviously in our membership who are between sort of startup and total scale up. And partnerships is something we often see, certainly from big incumbents. Maybe it could be other climate tech companies, it could be distribution partners. So keen to hear some of your thoughts around timing, approach, strategy, managing. How do you manage the power imbalances, etc. And so tell us some of the principles that have worked for you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Mick, for putting kind of an outline together there. It's helpful. We mentioned that we scaled Fathom to 26 countries. A lot of that, like many of you, was with a sales team of one or two. We figured early on that the only way we're going to give ourselves the power of 100 was to do that through partnerships. Mick, interesting you asked about the timing. Is there a time that's too early to start partnerships? I mean, for us, and bear in mind we were an AI SaaS B2B play. Okay, so I think that perspective is important because it will be different for different organizations and companies. But we decided early on that as soon as we had a working product and a customer, that we would then go out and start having partner conversations. So some might argue that's too early. But we needed a bigger sales organization. The only way to do that was through partners because we couldn't hire them. We didn't have the funding. So I find myself, I was the head of sales and head of partner. I found myself spending half of my time selling to customers and half my time selling to, if you will, partners and getting the likes of mostly large consultancies, but there was a mix of different types of partners. And spending time with them to convince them this was a good thing. So we started that by targeting what types of partners do we want, who would benefit most from having our platform and our data live in their customers. So for us, that was a mix of large consultancies, PwC, KPMG, BCG, also some tech companies that were in the automation space, so UiPath and Blue Prism. And also some HR specific players like Aon and Mercer, because we were kind of aligning to this HR space. So we identified those players. They had the most to gain if we were live in their customers. We then had to show them that, right? I would spend time writing their go-to-market strategy with our data. So if they were live with our data and their customer, here's how they could then sell more consultancy and make more money. It didn't come naturally to them. We had to spend time writing decks for them and coaching them on that. Even to go so far as to, I would go win clients that were theirs, bring those clients to them and say, here, and basically seed the market for them and show them that there was revenue in our license sale. Yes, but that was peanuts compared to the multi-million-dollar consulting contract they would get on the back of our data being live within that customer. So that was, a bit of effort, and these were big organizations, but it paid off tremendously. I mean, I think one of the main reasons we were able to scale so quickly, get into so many industries, countries, customers. Our customers were the likes of IKEA and Merck and UK government, New South Wales government, Telstra, MasterCard. They were big, large enterprises, Queensland government, Rio Tinto, etc. So to get access to those customers, yes, I could pick up the phones, I could get on social media, I could do everything I could, but having KPMG, PwC ring that customer and set up a meeting for me was so powerful.
So to dig into that, I think that's a really key point around the purpose, which is you wanted access to a particular kind of customer, and they had the access to it And so even though you could have worked really, really hard to get the customer directly, it would have both been hard because of that trust. And also, I'm guessing that once you unlock the first couple, it starts to get easier, and you can access. So there's a multiplier effect if it works. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd go as far as to say a lot of these players would ask us for exclusivity. Right? It came up in every conversation because we're nobody. We're this little outfit in Sydney. They're this massive gorilla. And I would say this to other startups that wanted to partner. We'd meet some great startups along the way and have great relationships. These are amazing people, and let's form a partnership. Yeah, that's easy. And you go, me and you equals two starved for resource partners for our customers or startups. Me and an 800-pound gorilla is true reach, true customer access. So, but you're right. They would say, well, hang on, and look, you can substitute AWS and Google for this, but if it's PwC and KPMG, they'd each say to me, "Oh, no way, you can't give this data to the other one. I want it. I want exclusivity." And basically, the model, and one of your questions about kind of how you structure this for scale. We built a model that said the first person to bring this to me, they're going to get exclusivity. You bring me Rio Tinto, I'm not going to go talk to Rio Tinto with any other of my partners, but I will be forming partnerships with every one of your competitors. And you don't want to be the last one standing without our data. And one of the best examples of that was Merck. Merck put out after I sold to Merck. Merck puts out an RFP. That RFP, they say, "Thanks, Greg. That's lovely." And I'm going, "Oh, damn, we lost that one." And then, their RFP goes out with Fathom written into it. And now KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, BCG, we're all sitting there. There are a few others with that RFP going, "Oh, piece of cake." So they wrote their response about all the work we'd done, the customers we had, but Deloitte couldn't say that. Deloitte was the only one of all these big players that said, "Oh, screw you guys. We're just going to build what Fathom is." And so they end up losing Merck because they can't say, "Oh yeah, we know Fathom," and they're the only ones in that RFP of like 6 majors that couldn't say they could use Fathom. So that was really powerful in that moment. And we just kept the course, no matter who asked for exclusivity. We just kept on that course. Nope, everyone's going to get it. Would you have exclusivity with Microsoft? No freaking way. So you're not going to get exclusivity with me. Everyone needs this. You be the first to bring me the deal, and then I will be locked and loaded with you all the way through.
Just to maybe add a couple of points to that, what Greg's described is exactly what happened. But you can probably tell that within what he said was quite a deliberate plan. So we didn't just sort of sit down at the beginning and say, "Okay, who's first on the alphabetical list of potential partners? Let's call them." There was quite given that I was a former BCG partner and Greg was a former Oracle and SAP APAC exec, we had some insight into the business models, the incentive structures, the way that the tech industry and the consulting industry went to market, the way they compete, and who each of the firms was confident about in terms of competitors and who they were a bit fearful about. And so by sequencing what we did and by allowing a target partner to know that we already had one of their key competitors as a partner, by getting or creating a situation where a customer would refer to a partner firm about another partner that we were already working with, we were able to kind of catalyze a bit of a movement around what we were doing. And it became highly additive, like what in defense land they would call a force multiplier. It wasn't something that we needed to spend. I mean, we obviously spent a lot of time on it, but it wasn't something that we needed to continuously fuel. It gathered its own pace because people kept seeing our logo and our names and our data and so on in their market reports, the competitor reports, their customer reports, and board packs and so on. And this was quite carefully put together with the insight that we had around how the different firms compete in different markets. And so just give you a quick example. From the outside, and I've never worked at either KPMG or PwC, but from the outside, both firms, they look kind of the same worldwide, right? Big global accounting firms with a bunch of services. but they actually operate very, very differently at a global and national level in terms of who makes decisions, the centralization or the kind of industry or customer level decision that's made and so on. And so understanding the different operating models and business models of the different firms and how they compete became really critical to us navigating a pathway through them. So I guess the kind of key message from here is that from our experience at least, and obviously it's going to be different in different industries, but in my experience, spending a bit of time up front, sort of really thinking about what are the dynamics of the partner market, the partner system that we want to get into, and what is the sequence, and you know, which partner actually serves us best in the long run may not be the first partner we speak to, and so on. So there's a bit of sequencing and if you like, sort of organizational fit that underpins the go-to-market motion that you end up putting in place.
And just to dive in on the sequencing, I think one of the things, obviously, at some point when you've got enough market share, everybody wants to partner with you and work with you. But you did it quite early. Like, was your product, was your MVP like really light and easy to get to an MVP, or like did your product develop over time? Because I think one of the things a lot of people face is, yeah, your product sounds great. As soon as you can hit these 3 metrics and get 3 other customers and get to enterprise scale, we'd love to put you in our partnership program. But were you able to actually build it along the way with partnerships, or did you get to an MVP, strong MVP really early?
Well, I think the answer is actually yes to both. So because BCG had acquired a previous company of mine, we were able to put some resources into the first sort of 12-month build that allowed us to kind of stand up a good product in the first instance. But the first round of product development was probably 9 or 10, maybe let's say a year. And clearly it develops significantly in the following sort of 4 years as we sort of scaled. But the first product was itself useful and valuable and unique and so on. It had all those different things. And so I think the answer is yes, we had something that was unique and valuable and scalable on day one, but it also significantly kind of grew over the subsequent sort of 3 or 4 years.
And so just digging on that a little bit more, and people feel free to put questions in the chat and I'll moderate them through. When you talk about product, sometimes I think people get caught up in the purely technical product.
Right.
Was your product actually at that stage? Was there service and support wrapped around it? Was there branding and confidence and community?
So as you were asking that, I was actually thinking of a point very similar to what you're making. But to answer your question, firstly, we didn't have a customer success team when we launched. You know, the experience, the customer experience was pretty rudimentary. I think the first time that we sold a SaaS license, in all honesty, we provided a PDF, and a couple of months later we delivered the SaaS with the revenue that we'd made from that first license. So, there was certainly some classic kind of startup moves there where, the dream that people have bought initially is something that, you're laying you're building the plane while it's in flight. Obviously there was some of that. Having said that, and I think this is hopefully something that will resonate with the climate tech and energy tech world just as strongly. There was a very human and socially important value proposition, as well as a very valuable data-based, AI-driven expression of value. So the product that we were selling from day one created real financial, organizational, operational, strategic value, but it was wrapped in language and quite an emotive and human and socially expressed value proposition that meant that boards and executives bought in at that kind of macro level. And even though our product was let's say substandard on day one and kind of improved over time, because we had that board and CEO buy-in, the head of automation, the CTO, the CIO, the CHRO dealt with the product inadequacy because they could see that the pathway that they were on by subscribing and becoming a SaaS customer was something that got them to this full value proposition as their board and CEO had understood it. A good example, again, that first customer was BlueScope Steel. And through a partner, we were introduced to the CEO, and the partner paid for my flight to go down to Melbourne. And one of the senior staff of the partner firm came with me. And we went into the CEO's office. We had an hour and a half meeting with the CEO of BlueScope. And the partner sat there and said, look, I think you should listen to this. And I sort of spoke. The next morning, the CEO called me and said, how do we get this? He said, I've been thinking about this all night. Literally, those were the words he said.
Mm.
And so we had that very human engagement. And I said, look, to be honest, we're not quite ready for scale yet. You're going to get a PDF in the first instance and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, great, I get that. How do we proceed? So I think balancing, Mick, what you just said there, and sort of finding a way to kind of thread that needle through a product which is still being developed or nascent or sub where you intend it to be, but having people engage and having partners engage and believe in that value proposition is one way to get those partners to carry you in those first kind of few steps.
And Mick, I'll just pick up your comments about kind of not just the product, but the brand and what's the market view of what you're doing, like all that wrapping around kind of what you launch with. I think the power of we spent so much time getting BlueScope Field to be our first customer. So the power of that logo as customer one was immense. But we also got BCG and KPMG when they signed up as partners, simultaneously signing up as customers so that when they walked into their customers, they could say, we're using it, right? And that just went such a long way to build case studies and business cases about their own business using our data and our systems. And now we're going to help you do it, customer. It was pretty powerful.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, good. I think that's one of the key things, right? It's like it's you don't want it to be like, well, just go get some customers, get some customers, get some partners, get some customers, and grow. It's I mean, I think the fact that you spent a year building a really, really strong MVP, but the reality that even with that your first product was substandard and you were honest about it, but you were able to tell the journey and get people along. Like I think it is a bit like that. You were selling multiple things at once: the product, the partnership, and the customer, all at the same time. And the first one's 10 times harder, and then it gets a bit easier.
Mick,
Yeah.
can I just again just pick up a comment there? Follow a comment that Greg said about the dynamics with the partner and getting the partner to be a customer as well. It sort of made me think that one of the lessons that we learned early on, and that one of the companies that I'm on a board of is going through right now, is actually kind of defining what is a partner and who is a good partner. Because partners may look like partners on the outside, but actually be time wasters and not actually be that effective. And one of the things we learned, and Greg mentioned KPMG and BCG, and that's what sort of lit this thought, was that KPMG have an alliances team whose job it is to reach out to third parties, tech companies, product companies, and whoever, and bring them through to their customers. PwC has one, BCG, they all have one, but those teams work very differently. And some are more effective than others. And some are, they're almost kind of corporate services back office staff that don't have a strong line of sight through to a real customer need. And some are highly hooked into what a customer lead partner and what a real, BlueScope Steel AMP, Rio Tinto, Tesco, whoever it might be, is doing. And getting really good at distinguishing between which are the companies that want to talk about us because we are somehow additive and we help them with a USP that they don't have themselves, and which are ones that actually want to bake us into their proposals and actually take us through to their customer and see a win-win-win at a kind of financial level. Understanding and distinguishing between those is something that takes a bit of time, but it does mean that when you've done that, you focus on the few that create the many rather than the many that take up a huge amount of time.
Yeah, and I think that goes a little bit to Debbie's question around NDAs, and then some people saying, well, the power imbalance again of like, I'll do it, but you can't, not a case study, that you have private versus public case studies. But I guess for you, I mean, you had a data component and you had to kind of be like, well, if you put the data in, you get 100 times the data out because you'll benefit. In fact, there's significantly less value if you don't. But did that also develop over time in terms of the like strictness around NDAs and branding and case study sharing?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a couple of there's reality and then there's what's in the contract. I mean, every PowerPoint deck I ever put together would have all those partners on it,
Mm.
right? And I'd use it in all my selling, even if they weren't happy with it or didn't know about it. Um, but when it came to say like the website and who did I put on it, probably followed a similar approach. Take the slap on the wrist if I get it. I think I got one of those in 4.5 years, literally. And I just went, oh dang, who did that? I'll have it taken down. That's a shame. But we proactively went after we signed each partner, no matter what we tried to get in the contract, we can use your branding, blah, blah, blah. If they took it out, you let it go. But the minute you did, sorry, the minute you signed, particularly the minute you signed a customer, then we would straight away go in with, great, let's work up a joint, case study that's going to support your go-to-market
Mm.
and my go-to-market,
Mm.
and just start working on it until we got it. We also did things that weren't necessarily partners, but they looked like it from the outside. We gave our data to MIT Tech Review, and it was public data, so we weren't breaking any rules. But then they would do a report on it, and that's hanging on their website and ours. And I go, holy cow, these guys must be for real. They've got MIT next to them. So again, I don't think anyone called us and said, can we get your software because they saw that. But it sure as hell was a credibility statement that got us through many hurdles in customer sales calls or partner calls for that matter.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, great. And was there any loss of customer contact? It's one of the other big things we get is that you go through a partner and you don't have the relationship and you don't get to get all the feedback. There's someone in between. Was that ever an issue, or how'd you get around that?
Uh, we we always kept the customer relationship side by side with the partner.
So it
Part
was
of
it was mutual. So you went through the partner, but you part of it was that you had to have a direct contract. So you were never white labeled. It's one of the big things I get is, oh, great news, Mick. I'm now white labeled by a partner, and maybe that can be good, maybe bad. But you did never
yeah.
had that approach.
No, look, I think you assess that on a case by case, right? If that's going to be best for you, and we're one of the
Mm. Mm.
companies we're on the board of, that Mike just mentioned, we're having that exact same conversation. All right, an OEM for you and that partner is going to be better than trying to slog it out and do license deals one at a time. So
Mm.
it's going to be situational, and you have to assess what's best, for that partner, that channel, and that go to market. We toyed with that approach quite a while and often, but we were having success going with partners. We started having partners going for us, but then we'd have customer success involved in every one of them. So we never handed over. So even if we handed over the relationship at the sales side, we didn't hand over the customer success part. So that meant we always had engagement with the customer and could get feedback from the customer through our customer success channel, that got them live and handle their questions and those kind of things.
Yeah, got it. That's good to think about. I think yeah, it is definitely case by case, but it is one of the things that you often get, and there's a temptation, right, to do a bit of everything, to be like, well, I'll do some direct to customer, and I'll do some through partnerships, and do some white label, and then you might end up running kind of three businesses that can be quite different. Was your business model, was it all through partnerships, and so you had a simpler business model of like, and did you incentivize I guess I think you said before the partners were making so much money out of consulting, they didn't need a clip of the ticket of the product.
Yeah, it's so we had both models simultaneously, which for a lot of salespeople is very challenging. Finding a salesperson that is comfortable and can handle one day selling directly to a customer and the next day working with a partner, or taking the deal they sold and giving it to the partner. Like, we formed a model internally in terms of our comp plan that made them whole either way. So, you have to be proactive about that and be good with that, and you should be. And then on the partner side, we had a couple of partners who we did, and this is, you asked about kind of what does good and bad look like? Best looks like that joint comp model, right? And even better than best looks like where they're getting uplifts on their deal because they sold your software next to theirs. So you can convince a partner to do that. That's the holy grail. But I think the medium ground or middle ground is, hey, yeah, we both get it, right? We both get comped on it. So there's no friction that's created there,
Mm.
I think is critical.
Yeah. I mean, again, a brief additional point. What Greg's describing there is something we referred to in the opening comments about how, in our experience, building a really good global partnership system with multiple partners in multiple markets hinged on our organizational insight about those firms, as well as the kind of go-to-market motion, the kind of sales incentives and marketing and customer insight and so on. Where we had really good organizational understanding, we could design our processes and our go-to-market model to fit. When it fitted, they were more likely to act. And it's just to be probably a bit simplistic, but hopefully helpful about it. It's the difference between push and pull. We can push marketing content out to target partners all day long, and it will just slide off. But when you understand what their rationale is, what their operating model, their culture, their structures, their processes and people and so on, and you fit with that, then they start pulling. And then the resistance disappears and the volume increases significantly.
Yeah, interesting. Just a couple more from me. One is you mentioned in terms of tire kickers, like is there? I know some companies use the model of like, well, once you go sell two, and I'll give you some benefit on the third one. Did you have mechanisms to actually evaluate which partners were serious and which ones weren't?
Oh, yeah, it all sounds pretty rosy up to now, doesn't it? Uh, there were plenty we learned over time. This is some testing, right, as you start doing this, but there were sectors that we went after. So we had these big consultancies, and they were winners, but they never went as fast as you wanted to go. But hey, they delivered big names, and that was great. You just had to set your expectations. They were going to deliver 100 deals, a quarter. It was going to be like five. Then there were tech partners we had that were much faster pace. And so, that UiPath and the Blue Prisms, like that was awesome, right? Faster paced. They didn't really know much about it, so you needed to be involved a little more, but more aligned to the kind of pipeline you wanted to grow. And then we had this other group that we probably started early with, and if I could go back and change anything, I never would have touched it, which is kind of these HR players for us because we were bought often by the CIO and the CHRO together. So anyway, these players like Aon and Mercer and there's a host of others we went after, and they said all the right things. They would put decks together for us. We'd go out and talk to customers, but ultimately they just wanted to look like they had a shiny new thing, that they had innovation, even though they weren't an innovative business. And it would basically just go to nowhere after that. So, identifying that early on, that they were using you for the wrong reasons, you just had to position it properly. Had I known that from the start, I would have just said, great. Have me on your next webinar. Have me on speak at your next conference. And then that's the right partnership for those players as part of my PR, marketing campaigns, but not as I'm going to get pipeline from this. I'm going to get customers from this. And that was, I think, a learning we had over time. One other note I'll make on that, we learned from the KPMG experience that we would have to go every country and sign it was like starting over when you got to the next country with that partner team, that industry lead for future, and that was a nightmare. So when we went to PwC, we looked long and hard, and we started doing this with every partner we were targeting to find the global lead talking the most, who was most active in LinkedIn, articles, just searching, who was most active in your area, talking about your particular climate area, perhaps. For us, it was future work. And then we go target that individual. And in the case of PwC, that person happened to be in Luxembourg. So I was in Luxembourg like 3 times in the first 2 years of this, which is ridiculous. Like, who the hell goes to Luxembourg? But that's where their global head of future work was. He was writing books. He was in every article they used him everywhere. He's showing up in Australia on their website. So that's where I went. That was the partnership we formed. And lo and behold, that led to a global agreement. Now, every PwC organization in the world could buy off of that. They didn't have to do contracts separately with us. Like, that was huge. But I mean, it took a lot of work to get that thing done, but very much better than going country to country to country to country to country over and over again, which is what we would have had to do.
Mm.
That's great. And I think that the last one with me, and please everyone put your any final questions in, or raise your hand. Do you need to you know, a lot of founders here that may not have partnership backgrounds, and maybe they don't even have the connections you have, but like where should they look for a partnership specialist? Do you have to have the founder passion to drive it and hold it and do that work?
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
what are the first steps?
I, I, I hate to say it, but I think there is a little bit of kind of specialist knowledge, not so much in partnership building, but in understanding the business models and the market of the partner firms or companies you want to talk to. So we were significantly helped by the fact that I was a former partner of BCG, and Greg, as I mentioned, was the former APAC leader of major software businesses like SAP and Oracle. So we understood the dynamics. We'd also, because we'd had these jobs, we didn't just understand consulting and big tech, but we'd sold major products or programs of work, tens of millions of dollars, to enterprise leaders. So we understood the dynamics of the C-suite and the boardrooms of kind of the Fortune 1000 companies. So we had, if you like, 3 pillars of knowledge, which I think is important. So maybe this is the answer to the question. I don't know whether you need to hire it, but you also need to understand the nature of the buyer. In our case, that was C-suite major companies. You need to understand the dynamics and the competitive dynamics in the partner firms so that you can really play them off against each other, create some FOMO, work out your sequencing and targeting and so on, and also clearly have domain expertise in whatever you're doing. So if you're missing one of those 3, then that's probably a gap. Again, we can only go on our experience. There's no playbook for this that we can point to. But in our experience, we had deep understanding of kind of SaaS and AI, deep understanding of consulting and technology companies, and deep understanding of the buyer. When you've got those 3, then you can kind of start saying, okay, well, how do I kind of combine those for maximum effect? So if that central piece, if that's not something you have, I don't think it's necessarily channel management, channel building, channel sales, whatever. I think those skills are relatively easily acquired. I think it's really understanding that partner market, however that understanding comes.
I'll just add on a hiring note, getting more tactical. You know, I've hired a lot of salespeople and helped startups hire a lot of salespeople. And there is a breed of salesperson that will never, can never partner. And they have been born and raised out of organizations like Oracle, the evil empire. Uh, and they are taught this to fight it almost. And in an interview, they might tell you, oh, yeah, I partnered with this and that and this and that. You really need to dig in and test if they're capable of sharing, working together, understanding why the success of that partner is your success. And it doesn't come natural to everyone. And like I said, some are trained this way. So you really need to test that when you're looking for that hire that might not be a founder, but might be your first sales hire. If your go-to-market is going to rely on partners in any way to make sure they have the mental state, to embrace that, want that, love that, because the outcome of that is a benefit to them and your organization. But like I said, it doesn't come naturally.
Just reading Jeff's question in the chat. I'll read it out for the video. How do you assess whether a potential customer is genuinely innovative or risk-taking? And so whilst Greg was speaking, I was just thinking about that. And my first answer, Jeff, was I don't know. My second answer was actually, I don't think we did. I think what we did is we assumed that, you got to think, this is 2018, 2019, through to 21, that we were building and scaling an AI company. This is before OpenAI. This is before LLMs. We had 8 different AIs in our platform. We were fundamentally risky. right? We were a completely new way of tackling huge data, and there are very, very few genuine AI companies scaling multinationally. Greg said that we're customers in 26 countries. They're also in 21 different industries, right? So it's a full spread. And we knew we were high risk. So to come back to your question, I don't think we looked for companies that were genuinely innovative or risk taking. I think we looked at how do we de-risk ourselves? How do we provide some certainty, some confidence, so that ordinary companies, middle of the bell curve, who knows where they sit on the risk spectrum, feels comfortable. And I think we also noted that, there are certain people in the organization, and there's one guy that Greg will remember very well, he dealt mostly with him, but he was the head of automation at 3 different ASX 50 companies, retail, telco, and insurance. And he bought Fathom in each one of those companies. So he bought us first in the major retailer, and then the insurance company, and then the telco. And he was clearly very comfortable with us. But there were others that he worked with even in the program office for automation, who were kind of running major kind of, well, I'll let you imagine, but major kind of automation programs that he and we needed to convince. And we said, look, we're not risky. This is how we're going to manage your data. We had kind of data and sort of compliance and SOC 2 and all these sorts of kind of regimes around how we manage customer data. Because if we'd had a data breach, that would have been the end of our business, because we were holding highly sensitive and comprehensive organizational, operational, financial, and people data about major companies from around the world. And so it wasn't so much that we looked for the innovative customer or company, it's that we said, okay, how do we present in a way that doesn't throw up that kind of risk aversion?
Yeah, we started finding customers that would suddenly, you'd pop up a vice president of the future of work. And I'm going, hallelujah, this is it. I've got someone with a job title that matches like what we do. Unfortunately, they were often no budget, no power, right? But a great title. So you had to go still find the business owner. What you do, where does that line up with the business objective, and give them outcomes? Regardless, you'd leverage that person with a great title to get you that meeting, but that's usually where their kind of responsibility ended.
Greg, there's
Thanks,
a question from Debbie
Yeah, a couple of quick
that
ones.
feels like it's your question here.
Yeah, how do you test for that sales ability through partnerships? Obviously, you can work it out after 3 months if they're not very good. I agree with Debbie. I'd love to know if you can work that out in the interview process. Even if they're telling you they can do it, is there a homework activity, or is
I think the easiest for me was always show me that you did it. Sorry, not do it now, but where have you done that? I can easily go. You say you did it with Microsoft, great. Who's the manager at Microsoft that I can talk to about give you a reference for that. So, and you can often tell by who they partnered with. So that same rep partnered with Microsoft. I know Microsoft only lives on partnering. So if they did that and there's proof of it, then tick. If they tell you they partnered with IBM or DXC, or go, really? Or did they just do the consulting after you sold the license, which is completely disconnected? So you can kind of tell also by the types of entities that they were, not just who they sold for, but who they partnered with.
I'll jump on the next question from Alexander. Again, I'll read it out. Do you want early partners to advocate for your product roadmap as well as the immediate value your product is delivering? So again, Greg said earlier on, he sort of ran sort of the whole go-to-market. I ran product technology and data. I would say absolutely not. So I would not be asking partners to be talking about product roadmap, because the risk is that the next thing that you're doing is so interesting that people are like, oh, great, I'll just wait for that. All right. Also, as we all know, delivering the product roadmap on the timeline that you think you're going to deliver it is well, let's just say it doesn't always happen. And so I think sort of pegging a kind of or aligning a partner to a future feature or kind of product release is risky because it means that it defers the sale, and if you miss the timeline, then you're in all sorts of strife with the partner and whoever their customers are. What I would say, however, is to the final part of your question about having the kind of that human connection to what you're doing. Definitely align them to the mission and vision. This is why we're here. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we will be building. Right now, it looks like this. And again, you'll all have different business models, but one of the benefits of SaaS, as we again experienced it, is that you buy your license now, you're going to get all the upgrades this year. Those features keep rolling through, but the license starts now. And it's just making sure, to one of the earlier points, that whatever you have now is compelling and valuable enough for people to sign for. But I would make a distinction there, Alexander, between advocating and explaining the product roadmap and the mission and vision. Definitely the latter, not the former.
Yeah, and Mike, sorry, Mick, you mentioned in your email kind of what does good look like and bad, and I think this question bleeds into that. A partner who's willing to sit down with you and your team to discuss that roadmap, or for them to bring forward. And Mike, we had this relationship with KPMG where they were coming up with ideas for the application of our platform we had not thought of, and actually led to business for us with both Queensland and New South Wales governments. So, you want to look for a strong partnership, one where they're willing to invest time to do that kind of strategic review, of what your joint go-to-market looks like, and even coming up with new potential market opportunities. It's not, really long-term road mapping, but it is short-term, where can we extend this? Where can we find new opportunities?
Mick, there hasn't been
Really?
a question about this, but I feel like I should sort of, as a final comment, there's one thing I want to really kind of be frank about. Sort of listening back to the last kind of hour, Greg and I've probably been quite sort of thoughtful and methodical, and hopefully at least, and this was our deliberate plan, and all of that was the case. We had a deliberate plan. We were very thoughtful. We were very methodical. We also had a saying, which we continue to say today: we lit fires everywhere, and we returned to the ones that burned brightest. Right. So we took every meeting. We went to every conference. We spoke at every event. We contributed to every bit of media. We answered the phone to every journalist. We met every partner who wanted to meet. And we had quite surprising things come from things that we thought were dead ends. And we had absolute dead ends from things that we thought were going to be surefire wins. And so something to maybe hopefully take away from this is, yes, there was a deliberate strategy to distribute globally through consulting and big tech. And yeah, we had some insight about how those markets worked. And yes, we did all the right things in terms of go-to-market and org design and so on. But there was also a level of energy and scrappiness and just keep going that happened, particularly in the first 24 months, until we could actually start looking around and going, oh, okay, guess what? These are the people who are actually going to act. Now we can kind of double down on them. So yes, there's, I don't want to come across on this call as, we had a grand plan from day one. We sort of sat there and we whiteboarded it, and then we just kind of did it. And it was pretty straightforward. It would be nice if that happened, but there was a scrappy energy, and we got to go get on the plane. We've got to go get in the car. We're going to go meet these people, be in the room, and we'll see what happens. So both happened.
We've got another comment and question from Debbie. I'm going to have to take it offline. I've got to step out to a panel starting in 10 minutes, just in another part of this building. But so Debbie, I'll pass that a message across and maybe introduce you to the team and have a chat.
Yeah, you can all follow up directly if you need to on anything. If after this there's more information you want about a specific thing, hit us up on LinkedIn and we'll
I'll share the details out on the founder channel team. And Greg and Mike, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's a really big opportunity. It's a challenging one. I think it can clearly work well. I think there's the years and years of hustle and hard work in there to actually make it work. But it's been great sharing, and I really appreciate the team. So you can get a big round of applause from everyone here. And thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Thanks,
everybody.